Hello and welcome. Always good to see you, whether I'm meeting up with you in a recorded video that we upload on our channel, Pure English, or whether I meet you in a live stream like today or tonight, depending on where exactly you are and where you're listening to me at. Right, so in today's live lesson, we will be tackling one of the most perplexing or confusing topics in English. And that's the topic of prepositions. And prepositions is one of the part of speech in English. So, as you might know, and that's something that we have tackled in a previous video, all words in English are classified into word classes, or what we call technically or grammatically in linguistic terms, we call them parts of speech. So any word, each and every word in English belongs to one of these parts of speeches or is categorized under a certain word class. One of the word classes is verbs, another one is nouns. We have also adjectives and adverbs. We have pronouns and interjections. And we have today's part of speech, excuse me, we have today's part of speech or today's word class, and that's prepositions. Maybe you're familiar with the concept of having prepositions that refer to time or place. For example, we have a preposition of time like after, like before, like no sooner. All of these are words which relate to a particular time, being in the past or the present or the future. And we also have prepositions of place, like on, under, between, next to, and so forth. But the thing is, today we're not talking about the prepositions of time or the prepositions of place. Today we're not tackling neither the prepositions of time nor the prepositions of place. We're tackling prepositions which are used after verbs and after nouns. If you watched my last lesson, which was yesterday, it was about phrasal verbs. And as I said in that video, a phrasal verb is a normal verb with one or two prepositions added to it. So you might say, well, if we are going to tackle verbs today, which are followed by prepositions, this means that today's lesson will also be about phrasal verbs, because phrasal verbs are simply verbs which are followed by prepositions. But no, not exactly. Sometimes verbs are followed by prepositions and they are not considered phrasal verbs. The fact of the matter is that in these cases, these prepositions are required to complete the meaning of the verb. For example, when you say agree with. So here we have the verb agree followed by the preposition with. But that's not a phrasal verb, because adding the preposition to the verb didn't change its meaning. So the meaning of agree, to complete, we need to use the preposition with. So in this particular case, because the preposition didn't amend or didn't alter, which means didn't change, because it didn't change the meaning of the main verb, it just completed it. It was necessary to complete the meaning of the verb. We say that this is not a phrasal verb. Another example, we have the verb know about. So if you know about cars, this means that you have lots of information about cars. Using the preposition about here after the verb know is essential because it complements the meaning. When you say, I know cars, it makes no sense. That's not the meaning we want to say. The meaning we're endeavoring to convey here is the meaning that you have a lot of knowledge about cars. So we say that you know about cars. In the upcoming section of today's live lesson, I'll be giving you some examples of these verbs which are followed by prepositions, and these prepositions are just essential to complete the meanings of the verbs, which means that I will not be talking about a group of phrasal verbs today, but I'll be giving you examples of prepositions used after verbs necessarily or essentially, which means that they have to be used to complete the meaning of the verb. For example, when you say that you are asking after somebody, if you ask after somebody, this means that you try to get information about that person. So ask after is equivalent or synonymous to ask about. But the thing is, using the preposition about after the verb ask can be used for things and for people, whereas using the preposition after necessitates the fact that you are asking about a person. For example, if you call the hotel, if you call or if you phone the hotel to ask after Steve, you can also say that you are phoning the hotel to ask about Steve. But if you call the hotel to ask about an offer that they have, or to ask about a certain price, about a certain hotel, about a suite in that hotel, for instance, we can't say that you're asking after the price or you're asking after the offer. So using the preposition after with the verb ask is only possible if you're trying to get information about a person, whereas using the preposition about after the verb ask is possible whether you're trying to get information about a person or a thing. So you ask after Steve, but you ask about Steve or you ask about the offer. So you can use about for the person or the thing, but you use after only if you're trying to get information about a person. A synonym to that verb is inquire after and inquire about. And here we need to stop for a while at the verb inquire. So the verb inquire is a synonym to the verb ask after or ask about. But this verb has two spellings. In British English, it's spelled with an E at the beginning, whereas in American English, they spell it with an I. So in British English, you spell inquire E-N-Q-U-I-R-E, whereas in American English, you spell it with an I alternatively at the beginning of the verb. So you spell it I-N-Q-U-I-R-E. So what I was trying to say here is that the verb inquire after or inquire about, these are synonyms to ask after and ask about respectively, bearing in mind the point that using the preposition after with these verbs necessitates the fact that you're trying to get information about a person only, but if you use about, it means that you're trying to get information about a person or about a thing. So these are the first two verbs used with prepositions, and these prepositions are necessary to complement the meaning of the verb. Ask after, which is a synonym to inquire after, and ask about, which is a synonym to inquire about. Ask after and inquire after as you are used to ask or to try to get information about a person, not a thing, whereas ask about and inquire about are used if you are trying to get information about a person or a thing. And keep in mind that the verb inquire is spelled differently in American and in British English. So in British English, it's spelled with an E at the beginning, E-N-Q-U-I-R-E. And in American English, it's spelled with an I at the beginning, and that's I-N-Q-U-I-R-E. Right. Another example with a verb that's followed with a preposition, although it's not a phrasal verb, is the verb care for. So if you care for somebody or if you care for something, this means that you take care of it or that you look after it. So you say, I care for my children when I'm not at work. So I care for my children when I'm not at work. This means that I take care of them and I look after them. So if you care for somebody, or if you care for the dog, you care for your pet, This means that you take care of it or that you look after it. Well, that's in affirmative sentences or positive sentences, but in negative sentences, the verb care for has a different meaning. So if you don't care for something, this means that you don't like it. So when you say, I don't care for the theater, or I don't care for going to theaters, this means that you don't like theater. You're not interested in going to attend plays in the theater and stuff like that. So using the verb care for in a negative sentence means that you don't like that thing. Also, the verb care for, when it's used in an interrogative sentence, and that's a question, it means if you want that thing. So when I ask you, would you care for a cup of coffee? Would you care for a cup of coffee? This doesn't mean that you take after or you look after the coffee or you take care of the coffee. It means if you want a cup of coffee, if you would like to have a cup of coffee. So when I ask somebody if they care for something, this means I ask them if they want it or not. So care for is one of these verbs which are followed by prepositions, although they are not phrasal verbs. In affirmative or positive sentences, they mean take care of somebody or something or look after somebody or something. But the meaning changes in negative sentences. If you don't care for somebody or you don't care for something, it means that you don't like him or you don't like it. And if I ask you whether you care for somebody or whether you care for something, this means you want it or not. So when I ask you, do you care for a cup of tea? This means I'm asking you if you want to have a cup of tea. Right. So far we have tackled 3 examples of verbs which are followed by prepositions. At the time, they are not considered phrasal verbs. These prepositions are just needed to complement the meaning of the verb. The first example was ask after, and its synonym inquire after. The second example was ask about, and its synonym inquire about. And the third one was care for. Sometimes changing the preposition after the verbs means that the register changes. The register of a certain text is whether this text is formal or informal. So, for example, when you say you're learning about something, you're learning about it. Here, this is a neutral context. It's neither formal nor informal. But when you say I'm learning of it, using the preposition of makes the context more formal or the register more formal. So I'll give you now 3 verbs in the neutral context and their counterparts in the formal contexts. So you say learn about in neutral contexts, but in formal contexts you say learn of. In neutral context you say talk about, and in formal context you say talk of. And by the way, you can also say talk on. So if you talk on somebody or something, or if you talk of them, this is the formal alternative of saying that you're talking about them in a neutral context. And the third one is know about. Know about is the neutral option or the neutral context option, whereas the formal alternative for that is saying know of. So as you could see, using the preposition of after the 3 verbs formalized the register, whereas on the other hand, using the preposition about neutralized the register or the context. So you say learn about, talk about, and know about. So you use about after these 3 verbs if you're speaking or writing in a neutral context. But you say know of, learn of, talk of if you are writing or speaking in a formal context. Another example, or the next example of a verb that's followed by a preposition, although it's not a phrasal verb, is to ask something of somebody. So if I ask a favor of you, Or if for example, I can say, I asked a lift of Sam. I asked a lift of Sam. Lift is the British way of saying a ride. In American English, they say a ride. In British English, they say a lift. So if I ask a lift of Sam, or if I ask a ride of Sam, this means that I'm requesting a lift or a ride from them. So if you ask something of somebody, this means that you're asking them to do it for you. And notice the combination of prepositions after the verb. So you ask something of somebody. This is the same as asking somebody for something. Look, prepositions are really tricky. Prepositions can really get so interesting. So just a little twist, a little tweak of the order of prepositions, or the prepositions used after verbs or nouns, changes the meaning big time. So you can say, I'm asking a lift of Sam, or you can say alternatively, I'm asking Sam for a lift. So you either ask something of somebody, not from. Some people might use from because in their native language or in their mother tongue, it's translated or interpreted into from. But the thing is, in this particular context, for this verb, you say ask something of somebody, meaning that you request it from them, or you say ask somebody for something. The next example of a verb that's followed by a preposition and is not considered to be a phrasal verb is if you agree to something or agree to doing something. As you can see, using the preposition to after the verb agree hasn't changed the meaning. The meaning is the same. It just complemented the meaning for us. If you agree to something, or if you agree to doing something, this means that you allow it to happen. It means that you give it the permission to occur. Example, you can say, once the government agreed to the scheme, it went ahead without delay. Again, once the government agreed to the scheme, which means that the government allowed the scheme to go. And by the way, a scheme is a plan. So if the government agreed to the scheme, or if the government agreed to performing or executing or implementing the scheme, it went ahead without delay. So if you agree to something, or you agree to doing something, this means that you give it the permission to take place, to happen, to occur. But if you agree about or agree on something, this means that you approve of it. For example, you say, I agreed about the offer once I knew its details. Again, I agreed about the offer once I knew its details. So you can say I agreed about the offer, or I agreed on the offer, which means that I accepted it or I approved of it. So notice how prepositions change even with changing the verb. So if you are talking about a certain offer, you can convey the idea of accepting it using 3 different verbs with 3 different prepositions. You say, I accepted the offer, no prepositions. Or you say, I approved of the offer. So the preposition used here is of. So of is the preposition used with the verb approve. Or you say, I agreed about or I agreed on the offer. So the prepositions that go with the verb agree are on and about. But if you use the preposition with after agree, it means that you have the same opinion with somebody else. You are similar to them. For example, I agree with you on the decision, or I agree with your decision. So agree with somebody, but agree on or about something. 2 more examples about verbs which are followed by prepositions and are not deemed or considered phrasal verbs, and then we shall move on to part 2 of today's live lesson, which will be also about prepositions used after nouns. When you say, for example, that you're acting for somebody or acting for something, this means that you officially represent them. So using the preposition for after the verb act here is needed to complement the meaning. It's essential for completing the meaning. So when you say that I act for the company, this means that you are a representative of the company. You officially or formally represent the company. So if you act for somebody or something, this means that you officially or formally represent them. And the next example about verbs which are followed by a prepositions and are not considered phrasal verb is if you call somebody after somebody. If you call somebody after somebody, this means that you give them the same name as another person. So you say, for example, I called my daughter after my mom. I called my daughter after my mom. This means that you named your daughter, or the name that you have given to your daughter is the same name of your mother. Right, so this is the first half or the first section of today's live lesson, and it was simply about using prepositions after verbs. The second half of today's lesson will be about using prepositions after nouns. Well, many nouns in English are followed by prepositions which are the same ones used with the relevant verbs and adjectives. For example, a verb like satisfy. What's the adjective from that? You can have satisfied. Satisfied is considered to be one of the adjectives belonging to the word family of the verb satisfy. So you say, I'm satisfied with something. For example, you say, the workers were satisfied with the decision. The workers were satisfied with the decision. So the noun from the adjective satisfied is satisfaction, and it's also followed by the same preposition, which is with. So you say, for instance, the satisfaction of the workers with the plan or with the decision was great. So the workers' satisfaction with the plan or with the decision was great. So normally, the noun is followed with the same preposition of its relevant adjective or its relevant verb. You say, for example, they agreed with the decision, or their agreement with the decision. So agreement is the noun, agree is the verb, and they are using the same preposition. But in many cases, you have the nouns followed by different preposition to the prepositions that follow the relevant verbs and adjectives. For example, you say fond of, but you say fondness for. Examples. You say, I am fond of Indian movies. I am fond of Indian movies. So fond is the adjective here, which means that you like Indian movies so much. If you want to use the noun, which is fondness, you cannot say of after the noun fondness. You can't say, I have a lot of fondness of Indian movies. No, you must say, I have a lot of fondness for Indian movies. Right. So fondness is the noun followed by the preposition for, but fond is the adjective followed by the preposition of. Another one is proud and pride. I am proud of my son. You say, I am proud of my son. So the adjective here is proud, and the preposition that follows it is of. But if you want to use the noun of that word, which is pride, you say, I take a lot of pride in my son. Notice the change of prepositions here after you change the word class. So you say, I'm proud of my son. You're using the preposition of with the adjective proud. But you say, I take a lot of pride, or I have a lot of pride in my son. You don't say, I have a lot of pride of my son. So now we have tackled two cases. The nouns can be followed by the same prepositions as the relevant verbs or adjectives. The second case was that the noun is followed by a preposition that's different to the prepositions used after the relevant adjectives and verbs. Sometimes you have a noun followed by a preposition at the time the verb or the adjective are not followed by a preposition at all. So you say, for example, that the government banned cigarettes. For instance, the government banned cigarettes. So the verb here is banned. If you want to use the noun, it becomes the government imposed a ban on cigarettes. You see? So using the noun ban necessitates using a preposition after it, which is on. But when we used ban as a verb, it wasn't followed with a preposition. So we said the government banned cigarettes without any prepositions used, but we say the government imposed a ban, which is a noun, a ban on cigarettes. So this is an example of a noun that takes a preposition after it at the time its verb doesn't take any preposition. Another example. You can say, for instance, I admire Cristiano Ronaldo. For instance, I admire Cristiano Ronaldo. So the verb here is admire, and there is no preposition used. You say, I admire the guy. But if you want to use the noun, which is admiration, it here takes a preposition. So you say, I have a lot of admiration for Cristiano Ronaldo. So you see how the combination differed. So when you said, I admire, no preposition is used. No preposition with the verb. But when you use the noun form, which is admiration, you have to follow it with the preposition for. So you say, I admire Cristiano Ronaldo without any prepositions, but you say, I have a lot of admiration for Cristiano Ronaldo. So you must use the preposition for. Right, so this is the third case now. We tackled a case in which the nouns are followed with the same prepositions of their verbs and nouns, like satisfied with, satisfaction with. So both the adverb and the noun take the same preposition. Type number 2, or the second case, was nouns which are followed by prepositions different from the prepositions that follow the relevant verbs and adjectives. Like, for example, when you say pride, that's the noun, in. But proud, that's the adjective, of. You see how the prepositions differed when you use the adjective proud, of, but when you use the noun pride, the preposition changed into in. You take a lot of pride in something or in somebody. Case number 3 was for nouns which are followed by prepositions at the time their verbs or their adjectives do not have any prepositions after them, like admiration for and admire. There are 2 prepositions which are very common after nouns. These are of and to. So these are 2 of the most common prepositions used after nouns. Of and to. Of is usually followed by verb ing form, which is the gerund or the ing form of the verb. To is usually followed by the infinitive, the infinitive of the verb, which is the base form of the verb, the original form of the verb, without adding anything to it. Right. So sometimes you have the noun followed by of, but it cannot take 2. For example, you say, Sylvia has the habit of biting her nails. Again, Sylvia has the habit of biting her nails. So here the noun, which is habit, is followed by the preposition of and then the ing form of the verb, which is biting. You can't say Sylvia has the habit to bite her nails. That's not correct. So the point I'm trying to make here is that though of and to are the most common prepositions to be used after nouns, many nouns are only followed by of, they cannot be followed by to, and others are only followed by to and they cannot be followed by of. And I gave you the example of the noun habit. Habit is one of those nouns which take the preposition of followed by the gerund or the ing form of the verb, but they cannot take these nouns cannot take the preposition to followed by the infinitive. So when I was talking about that girl or that woman, Sylvia, I said in the example that Sylvia has the habit of biting her nails, which means that the noun habit is followed by the preposition of and the ing form of the verb. In this particular example, it's biting, but you can't say that Sylvia has the habit to bite her nails. That's incorrect, because habit is one of those nouns which have to be followed by of plus verb ing rather than to plus infinitive. But other nouns are the opposite. They can be followed only by to plus infinitive, and they cannot be followed by of plus verb ing. For example, we say, his unhappy childhood explains his reluctance to talk about his parents. Reluctance means hesitation. If you are reluctant to do something, it means that you're not sure you want to do it. You have mixed minds, or you are in two minds about it, right? So that's reluctance, that's hesitation. You haven't made up your mind yet. You're not exactly certain or positive if you want to do it or not. So reluctance is one of those nouns which have to be followed by a to infinitive, and they cannot be followed by of plus verb ing. The example again says, his unhappy childhood explains his reluctance to talk about his parents, not his reluctance of talking about his parents. So reluctance is one of those nouns which have to be followed by the to infinitive, and they cannot be followed by of plus verb ing. Some other nouns, a third group of nouns, can be followed by both with no difference in meaning. So some nouns in English can be followed by of plus verb ing or to plus infinitive, and the meaning stays the same. For example, the aim of providing clean drinking water has been achieved, or the aim to provide clean drinking water has been achieved, right? So the noun we're exemplifying with here is the noun aim. Aim, which is spelled A-I-M, is one of those nouns which can be followed by two combinations, either of plus the ing form of the verb, or to plus the infinitive of the verb. So you can say, like the example, you can say, the aim, which is the target or the goal or the objective. The word aim has many synonyms. You can say the goal or the target or the objective. So back to the word, the aim. The aim of providing clean drinking water, or the aim to provide clean drinking water has been achieved. Right. So far, or as yet, we have tackled three different cases. Nouns which can be followed only with of plus gerund, and they cannot be followed by the to plus infinitive. The second case was nouns which can be followed by the to plus infinitive, but they cannot be followed by of plus the gerund or the ing form of the verb. And the third case was verbs which can be followed by both with no change in meaning, like the noun aim. So you can say the aim of providing or the aim to provide clean drinking water has been achieved. As you can see, the noun aim can be followed either by of providing, of plus verb ing, or the aim to provide. It can be followed by to plus infinitive. The fourth and the last case is that of nouns which can be followed by the two prepositions of and to, but the meaning changes. For example, we have a noun like chance. Chance, in American English, they spell it, they pronounce it chance, and the spelling is C-H-A-N-C-E. So this noun can be followed by the of plus ing combination or the to plus infinitive, but the meaning changes. So when you say the chance of doing something, this means the likelihood or the possibility of doing it. For example, you might ask somebody, What is the chance of our team qualifying to the next round? What is the chance of our team, or what is the chance of qualifying to the next round for our team? This means what are the prospects? What's the likelihood? What's the possibility of our team qualifying to the next round or to the second round? So when chance is followed by of plus verb ing, it means the likelihood or the possibility. But when chance is followed by to plus infinitive, it means an opportunity to do something. So you can say, for example, I grabbed the chance to meet the manager. I grabbed the chance to meet my manager or the manager, which means that you took the opportunity, that you capitalized on the opportunity of meeting the manager, and apparently it was something hectic or something difficult to happen, right? So chance, when it's followed by the of plus ing combination, it means the possibility or the likelihood of that thing. But when you say the chance to do something, this means the opportunity to do it. Another example of a noun that can be followed by the two prepositions and the meaning differs is the noun sense. So sense of doing something doesn't have the same meaning as the sense to do something. When sense is followed by of plus verb ing, it means a feeling. For example, you say, everyone was so friendly and she had a sense of belonging within a few days. Again, everyone was so friendly and she had a sense of belonging without a few days, which means that she had a feeling of belonging to the place. They provided her with such a warm atmosphere, so she had the sense of belonging, which means the feeling of belonging, not the sense to belong. This cannot be used because the meaning is not like that. But using to plus infinitive after the noun sense means good judgment, wisdom. So when you say, for example, it's pouring with rain, I hope David had the sense to take an umbrella with him. Again, it's pouring with rain. I hope David had the sense to take, not of taking, but to take an umbrella with him, meaning that I hope that he had the wisdom and he made the good decision of taking the umbrella with him because it's pouring with rain. It's torrential. Torrential means heavy rain. Right, so the two nouns, chance and sense, are two examples of nouns which can be followed either by to plus infinitive or by of plus verb ing, but the meaning changes. And this gives rise to four classes of nouns. The first class can be followed by of plus ing, but cannot be followed by to plus infinitive. The second type is the opposite. It can be followed by to plus infinitive, but it can't be followed by of plus verb ing. The third case is for nouns which can be followed by both and the meaning stays the same. And the last case was if the noun can be followed by the two prepositions of plus verb ing or to plus infinitive, but the meaning will be different. Right, so this was our live lesson today about prepositions used after verbs and used after nouns. In our next session, we will be talking about two quite distinct topics. We will be differentiating between the two words between and among. Many people confuse these two words together and they don't know how to use them correctly and effectively. So in our next live lesson tomorrow, we will be explaining how to use the two words correctly. I'm talking here about the word between and the word among. And in the second live lesson, in the second half of tomorrow's live lesson, we will be talking about exceptions, how to talk about exceptions, how to use words like except, words like but for, words like apart from, how to use all these expressions if you want to talk about exceptions, whether in your written English, in your writing, or in your spoken English, in your speech. And here we come to the end of our live lesson today. Thank you for your attentive listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.